Welcome back to the part 2 of the journey of Joseph. Ensure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's dive in. Joseph's journey continues, the burden of betrayal and the strength of faith. Reflection on the past. As Joseph continued his life in Egypt, he often found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. In his quiet moments, he would ponder his dreams of the past, marveling at how the once vague symbols had unfolded into reality. What he once shared innocently with his brothers, the visions that had stirred jealousy, had now become part of Egypt's history. Yet, for all his power and success, the memory of his family never left his heart. Joseph understood now, in a way he hadn't as a young boy, the pain his dreams had caused his brothers. Looking back, he could almost feel the piercing sting of their resentment. The colorful robe that had once been a source of joy was now a reminder of the bitter betrayal he'd suffered. But it was this very betrayal that had been the first step in his journey to becoming a leader, a protector of nations. A land in crisis. While Egypt's prosperity continued under Joseph's guidance, the 7 years of famine raged on, worsening with each season. People from surrounding lands came to Egypt, drawn by the promise of food and the survival it offered. As the famine spread, it drove people to desperate measures, selling all they owned to survive. Joseph witnessed firsthand the plight of the people as they sold their lands, cattle, and even themselves to Pharaoh. Under ordinary circumstances, such exploitation might have created bitterness and discontent. But Joseph's careful and fair handling of these transactions ensured that no one felt mistreated, and that their needs were met despite the growing hardship. For Joseph, it was both a test of his character and a call to fulfill his purpose. The wisdom he had shared with Pharaoh had prepared the land, but it was his integrity that sustained its people. Joseph's own sufferings had taught him compassion and humility, and he treated even the poorest with kindness and respect. The arrival of his family. One day, as Joseph sat overseeing the daily distribution of grain, he looked up and saw a group of men entering. They were travel-worn and dusty, unfamiliar to the Egyptians around them, but Joseph recognized them immediately. His heart skipped a beat, his breath caught in his chest. It was his brothers. The very ones who had once cast him into a pit and sold him into slavery now stood before him, unaware of who he had become. Seeing them in need and desperation stirred a mixture of emotions in Joseph's heart. There was pain, but also an inexplicable sense of relief. Despite everything, they were alive, and in that moment, Joseph felt a renewed sense of gratitude for his family. For so long, he had been alone in Egypt, with only memories of his father and youngest brother Benjamin. Yet now, by a twist of fate or perhaps divine design, here they stood before him, vulnerable and in need. Testing the brothers. Joseph's heart ached with conflicting emotions. He wanted to embrace them, to reveal his identity, and to weep with them. But he also felt the need to discern whether they had truly changed since that fateful day in Dothan. So he decided to test them. With a stern expression, he addressed them through an interpreter. "Where do you come from?" he demanded, concealing his identity. His brothers, unaware of the trap Joseph was setting, respectfully replied, "We come from Canaan to buy food." Joseph watched them carefully. Had they suffered as he had? Had they changed? "You are spies," he accused coldly, searching their faces for signs of guilt or remorse. "You've come to see where our land is unprotected." The accusation shocked his brothers, who fervently denied it. "We are honest men, not spies," they protested, a claim that would have felt hollow to Joseph if he hadn't already begun to perceive the sincerity in their voices. They went on to tell him of their family, mentioning their father and younger brother Benjamin. Listening to them speak of his family, Joseph felt a surge of emotion but maintained his composure. "If what you say is true," he replied, "then one of you must go back and bring your youngest brother here to prove your story. Until then, I shall keep the rest of you here, confined." In reality, Joseph had no intention of harming them, but he knew they needed to face the consequences of their actions and perhaps see the pain that betrayal could cause. He detained them for 3 days, not to punish but to allow them time to reflect. On the 3rd day, he released all but Simeon, instructing them to return to Canaan and bring Benjamin to him as proof of their honesty. Reunion with Benjamin. When the brothers returned with Benjamin, Joseph could hardly contain his emotions. His youngest brother was now a young man, the image of their mother Rachel in his face. Seeing Benjamin again brought Joseph immense joy, yet it also stirred up the grief he'd carried for years. The memory of his mother's death, the void it had left in his heart, and the loneliness of his years in Egypt. Joseph invited all his brothers to dine with him, but they were bewildered by his kindness, wondering why an Egyptian official would show them such favor. They sat down according to their ages, though they didn't understand how he had known. And as they dined, Joseph ordered Benjamin's portion to be 5 times larger than the others, a subtle reminder of the favoritism that had once caused such jealousy. When it was time for them to leave, Joseph tested his brothers once more. He instructed his steward to hide his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. As they journeyed back to Canaan, Joseph's guards stopped them, accusing them of theft. The brothers protested, swearing their innocence, but when the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, they tore their clothes in despair, fearing they would lose another beloved brother. They returned to Joseph's house, where Judah stepped forward, offering himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. Judah's plea was heartfelt, a testament to his changed heart. He explained how deeply it would grieve their father to lose Benjamin, how it would break his spirit beyond repair. It was at this moment that Joseph's heart could bear it no longer. He saw the love they now bore for each other, the loyalty and repentance in their eyes, and he was overcome. He dismissed his attendants, leaving himself alone with his brothers. "I am Joseph," he cried, his voice choked with emotion. "Is my father still alive?" A family reunited. The revelation left his brothers stunned, too shocked to respond. Joseph's words felt like a thunderclap in the quiet room. They were terrified, remembering their betrayal and fearing retribution from the powerful man standing before them. But Joseph, his face softened with tears, reassured them. "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves," he said, "for it was not you who sent me here, but God. He sent me ahead to preserve life, to save our family from this famine." In that moment, the years of separation and suffering fell away, and the brothers wept together, bound by a new understanding and mutual forgiveness. Joseph embraced each of them, and their cries of relief and repentance filled the room, washing away the bitterness of the past. Reconciliation with Jacob. When news of Joseph's reunion with his brothers reached Pharaoh, the ruler ordered Joseph to bring his family to Egypt and settle them in the fertile land of Goshen. Joseph's brothers returned to Canaan, carrying with them the message of his survival. When Jacob, now aged and frail, heard the news, his heart leapt with joy. He had spent years grieving, believing his beloved son was lost forever, and now he was to see him again. Jacob made the journey to Egypt with his sons and their families, his spirit renewed by the hope of reunion. As father and son finally embraced, tears flowed freely, healing years of sorrow and loss. New beginnings, the family's life in Egypt. Settling in Goshen. As Jacob and his family settled in Goshen, they found themselves in a fertile land ideal for their livestock and way of life. Pharaoh's favor toward Joseph extended to his entire family, granting them privileges and protection in a foreign land. For the first time in many years, Jacob felt a sense of peace. Surrounded by his sons and grandchildren, he watched as the family flourished under Joseph's guidance, realizing that God had truly worked in mysterious ways. Joseph, now reunited with his father and brothers, felt a completeness he hadn't known in years. Though he had grown accustomed to Egyptian customs and governance, he relished the time he could spend with his family, reconnecting with his roots and sharing stories of their heritage with his own children, Manasseh and Ephraim. The blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh. As Jacob neared the end of his life, he called Joseph to his side, desiring to bless his grandsons Ephraim and Manasseh. This moment was especially meaningful for Joseph, who wished to honor his father's wishes and introduce his sons to their ancestral blessings. When Joseph brought his sons to Jacob, the patriarch, though frail and nearly blind, placed his hands on the boys' heads. In an unexpected move, Jacob crossed his arms, placing his right hand on Ephraim, the younger, and his left on Manasseh, the elder. Joseph, believing his father had made a mistake, gently attempted to correct him. But Jacob assured him, explaining that Ephraim would grow greater despite being the younger. The blessing was a profound moment, reinforcing the spiritual heritage that Joseph had held close despite his years in Egypt. Through this blessing, Joseph saw his father's faith, a testament to the resilience of their people and a reminder of the divine promise that had guided his family through every trial. Jacob's final words in death. Before he passed, Jacob gathered his sons to give each of them a personal blessing. The words he spoke were both poetic and prophetic, offering insight into each son's character and destiny. To Judah, he spoke of leadership, foreshadowing the royal lineage that would come from his descendants. To Joseph, he spoke of strength and resilience, blessings of prosperity and favor that reflected the life Joseph had led. Joseph listened intently, humbled by the legacy his father left him. He realized that his journey had become part of a larger story, one that transcended his personal experiences. When Jacob finally breathed his last, the family mourned deeply, and Joseph arranged for his father's body to be taken back to Canaan for burial, fulfilling Jacob's last wish. In a grand procession, Joseph and his brothers journeyed to Canaan, accompanied by Egyptian officials and chariots, a testament to Joseph's stature. Upon reaching the cave of Machpelah, they laid Jacob to rest beside his ancestors. This journey marked a solemn reconnection with their homeland and a reminder of the covenant that bound them to it. The brothers' fears and Joseph's forgiveness. After their father's death, Joseph's brothers feared that he might finally seek revenge for their past cruelty. They approached him with caution, humbly requesting forgiveness and recounting their father's wish that Joseph pardon them. Joseph was moved by their humility and assured them once more that he held no resentment. He reminded them of the divine purpose that had been fulfilled through their actions. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives," he told them, his voice steady with conviction. This reassurance brought peace to his brothers' hearts, and they wept together, united by the shared journey that had brought them through betrayal, redemption, and reconciliation. Joseph's forgiveness symbolized the end of an old wound and the beginning of a new chapter for the family.